Welcome to the Catalyst Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Epstein. Joining me today is David Gomel, CEO of Rosecrance Behavioral Health, and a nonprofit comprehensive behavioral health organization. David has over 30 years in the behavioral health field with both clinical administrative experience. As CEO, Dr. Gomel leads a network of more than 70 sites across Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin. David, hello.
Charles, how are you? Glad to be here.
I am doing well. I should mention for our listeners, you stunned me the first time we spoke several weeks ago, asking me if anybody has ever told me that I sound like Christopher Walken. And I told you that no, that's the very first time. And I'm still not quite sure how to deal with that. I guess there's good and bad. I'm a big fan of Christopher Walken. I don't hear it. I don't know if we necessarily want to dwell on it, but I couldn't help but bring that up, David.
I just think you take it without judgment, Charles. I am a fan also. I think his vernacular and dialect is very well. I was mistaken for Bruce Willis on the road, and I said, no, it's Brad Pitt. You're confusing.
Yes, and you can get away with that in this particular version of our podcast because it's all audio. When we do make the switch to video, we have you on. We'll see what our audience has to say about that, Dr. Gomel. Anyway, I think you are on pretty firm ground with the Bruce Willis. I can see that.
All right, thank you.
I can see that. But we'll see how you handle a hostage negotiation. Anyway, again, David, much appreciated. I know you're a busy guy. I really appreciate you taking the time. So first, straight away, I got to ask you, give us an overview. Give our audience an overview of Rosecrance Behavioral Health and your role.
Yeah. So Rosecrance Behavioral Health, founded in 1916, so well-established legacy nonprofit organization. Today, we, as you said, have over 70 sites. And actually, our newest site is in Northwest Indiana, in Dyer St. John area in Indiana. Our mission is to serve as many people as we possibly can. We are board-led and mission-driven. We work in the full spectrum of behavioral health. So we have mental health programming, individual, group, family, couple counseling, psychiatry, TMS, Bravado, medication-assisted treatment. We have almost 500 beds inside the Rosecrance network, and really from about central Illinois up through Madison and then northwest Iowa all the way through the Quad Cities, have a legacy of providing good quality behavioral health care. I serve as CEO, so I started at Rosecrance at 22, and I am now, as my wife cringes when I say the double nickel. She said it makes me sound much older than 55. So I've got a long history with Rosecrance. Never intended to stay here. Never intended this to be my field. But when you fall in love, right? And this mission speaks to me in so many different ways. So started as a technician at minimum wage, and today I get to call myself CEO, and I consider myself very lucky for that.
What did you see yourself doing 30 some odd years ago?
Mostly just being with my wife. That was my big life.
Your big ambition.
Thank God, 30 years later, she's still putting up with me. I was a neuroscience major in undergrad, and so I was perfusing rat brains and studying hypothalamus, and that's really kind of where I thought I'd go. I myself am a person in recovery with a mental illness, and so I was drawn to this field because of that, and it just all works. So we'll see. I keep telling my kids I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for a living, so we'll see how this pans out.
Well, implicit in that, the inference is, of course, you said you fell in love, and when you actually love what you're doing and you find meaning in what you're doing, and it's incredibly rewarding, it never does feel like work, right?
Well,
all right. I probably overstated because there is work and it does feel, you do have to get up in the morning. There is stress. I probably overstated that. I apologize, but I think you take my point.
I will say this, that we have over 1,400 team members, and I stand in awe of these individuals and the work that they do. And we have over 70,000 patients who bravely face their disorders, not of choice, but of biology, and exhibit such bravery as they move forward into their recovery journey. And there is rarely a day or at least a week that goes by where I don't meet someone in the community that says, I know Rosecrance. you saved my fill in the blank's life, whomever their loved one is, child or spouse or partner or friend. And that's it. So while, yes, there are days it feels like a lot of work, it is so gratifying. And, I believe I'm doing what I'm called to be doing. So uh, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yes. 30 years is a significant period of time. What would you say have been the one or two most significant changes in the field over that time?
I think one of the largest changes, I'm not going to, got more than two, if that's okay. I think one of the largest changes was the onset of managed care, both commercial insurance managed care and Medicaid managed care. It completely altered the way in which care is delivered. The golden rule, he with the gold rules. And the insurance companies and the MCOs put some expectations in place that were very different early in my career. That said, I also think it made our field stronger and better and added more credibility. Where at one point, 30 plus years ago, if you're in recovery, that qualified you to be a substance use counselor. Today, it is evidence based, it's science based, it's driven by metrics and outcomes and research and best practices. And the field has evolved dramatically. I think the third piece in that is while I believe this is the most stigmatized illness, disorder, disease, mental health, and substance use in the medical field, that stigma has reduced at some level. And people are more apt to get help when they don't feel well, whereas before it was such a shameful act to seek help. And because of that, we're able to provide better care. Where we used to divide a mental health and a substance use issue, today at Rosecrance, it's a behavioral health issue. You're a whole person, and we're going to help you from head to toe, really. I mean, if there's something we can't do, we'll find the help that you can. So it has evolved quite nicely. I'm proud to be a part of this field.
Stigma obviously has been a historical issue, as you allude to, and you say that that has diminished to a large degree. Two questions. What has accounted, or what has been the most significant reason for that? And obviously, it could never, probably ever, diminish enough. So what needs to be done to make it diminish further?
Yeah, well, I think the first accounting is people having less trepidation about standing up and saying, I'm a person in recovery. I think that means something, in the community in which we raised our children. I coached the soccer teams. I volunteered at the church. I served on boards of directors, and I'm a person with a mental illness. It destigmatizes when you can see that. But I happen to be CEO of a badass company, and things work. I think to continue to improve that, we have to continue to have the dialogue and the understanding. You are rare, if ever, going to meet someone where behavioral health malady has not impacted them or their family members in some way or other, or a close associate, an employee or a partner. And the more we can talk about that and recognize this level of disorder or malady as a health condition versus a moral failure or a lack of will, the better it's going to be. And so we just keep talking about it. And at Rosecrance, that's what I keep talking about, is trying to break down that stigma.
I wasn't expecting to ask you this, but it sort of occurs to me as we're speaking about this. Obviously, with the emergence of technology, health, even AI, we hear countless stories where people are self-diagnosing, or these tools are used in counseling and these interactions in a very positive way. But there's also, of course, negative consequences. What's your position on that, broadly speaking? I know it's a very big issue, so it's probably not reducible to a simple answer, but I'd like to get your take on that.
Yeah, I'm huge on AI. I think I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence. When you and I were in school, we didn't have computers, we didn't have Google, there wasn't the World Wide Web to get our. I wish there was. When I was finished my doctorate, it would have been nice to pull in. Um, that hasn't hurt our society. That has enhanced us, but there's inherent bads and goods with that. I think artificial intelligence is proving to be an incredible augmentation to therapeutic models. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy homework, can be generated from there. I think it becomes very dangerous very quickly when that's your primary source of care and support versus someone who has been trained and experienced. Just because the LLMs, the large language models, have all the resources at its fingertips instantaneously, where a human therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist may not. The human has the experience and can read the body language and be part of the stories. And I am sure you have read the same articles I have about some horrific outcomes and limitations with AI when the superficial is done and then it digs in more deeply. And I know there are current lawsuits. Some have blamed people dying by suicide based on AI. You can take different conditions and each one poses danger. Think of obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a disorder based on uncertainty, and the compulsions are part of an ability to try to seek reassurance. When I don't know if you've been on ChatGPT, like I do just about every single day, it tells me how beautiful and handsome I am at the very beginning and how bright and yes, you do look like Brad Pitt. It gives me the information I need, and then we say goodbye. But if if I have this compulsion to feel better and reassure, I've heard stories of people 12
Mm,
hours later, they emerge from their computer, not realizing just how deep down the rabbit hole they fell.
yeah.
So it needs to, like any evolution, it needs to be monitored and managed. But I do think it's going to help advance our field. At Rosecrance, we're using AI in a number of ways. We're starting to use AI helping us navigate the phone calls. We have 25,000 phone calls every single month, and we're trying to figure out how to best sift through and help all of the people who want help. And we're engaged with the company that can help us navigate these calls and get people to the right place. We're using AI as kind of an automated ambient listener to help write progress notes. So our therapists are spending more time with clients than they are documenting on the progress note. We're, from the business side with claims processing. There's so much that's going to help us advance this field. I'm not afraid of it. I am afraid if people use this as their exclusive source of therapeutic knowledge because the interaction between another human is invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. I think with any technology, for the most part, I don't want to overstate, that's as good as the user. And you get out of it what you put into it for the most part, again, with some caveats. I've heard also of some organization using it in training.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And we are, you can create automations. There's AI software out there that can look at nuances, symptoms that a client or patient has and help, the counselor say, you might want to think about adding this to the piece. It doesn't take the place of clinical supervision, but it can help things that are missing. And I listen, I read everything I can about this and I listen as often as I can. And I have heard horror stories about how physicians are missing diagnoses because they're becoming dependent on AI and not using their own intuition and knowledge. And then I've heard stories that how AI has helped them realize or find a piece that they may have missed on their own.
Last question. I don't want to dwell too much on AI. We can certainly go down that rabbit hole. I wonder, given your neuroscience background, if you're more predisposed maybe than your cohort in embracing or taking this position. Do you find that others in your field, can you make that? I don't know if you've seen studies or if it's just anecdotal. What would you say to that? How do others in your field, practitioners, et cetera, or people in leadership roles feel about AI?
It's all anecdotal. I think it's across the board. I think some people resist change. Some people become overly dependent and excited about change. I'm probably more modern just about everything in my life, frankly. That there'll be some goods and some bads, and balance is always the answer, right?
Yes, for sure. We spoke about some of the developments over the past 30 years, some of the challenges, particularly as far as stigma goes, but obviously that's diminishing. I want to talk about some of the other challenges and probably foremost among them changes in funding and legislation. I'd like to speak about that a little bit and how you're planning and pivoting.
Yeah, pivot is a great word, Charles. I'll tell you, I worried mightily at the start of this year. Still am very worried. At the start of the year, when all we knew was that people were losing their benefits, that SAMHSA was being defunded, that grant funding was going away. And at Rosecrance, we're very well blended in our funding. We serve some of the most vulnerable people in societies, and we serve some of the most affluent people in societies. I was not worrying about those with affluence and insurance. I was worried about those that their means are meager and, or a safety net for these individuals. And so it shook me. I mean, I've been around for a long time. I'm still very nervous about what the outcome is going to be. People that are, I could go deeply into some of the root causes of people who are marginalized
Mhm.
by race, by gender, religion, and generational impacts that happen. And our answer, our solution is to reach out and help individuals become, give them a leg up. And when you're living with mental health and a substance use disorder, you're already stigmatized. And now you have some of these generational or racial inequities that tie into that. And I see no good happening when we start cutting funds for these very vulnerable people. And at Rosecrance, that's what we take pride in, is it's helping all people, saying yes to everyone that needs behavioral health care. And if you're not healthy in your mind, you're not going to be healthy in your body or in your positions, your jobs, your relationships. It's like breathing, having adequate functioning mental health. And so it is of great fear to me. Luckily, as I said, Rosecrance is diversified. And right now, my attention is ironically continuing to build the markets for people with commercial insurance so I can offset some of the losses that are occurring on the public side and in our community lines. And I was questioned initially, like, what are you doing? It's the people without means that are in trouble, and you're doubling down on the people with means. I'm like, yeah, because someone's got to pay for this whole thing, and I'm not planning on shutting anything down. And I think we are building and have built an organization that outlasts administrations. And this is just another challenge for us in our 100+ year legacy to move forward with.
How far back did you implement this hybrid approach?
We've been, I bet you, it's a good question. 20 years. We've been mixed for probably 20 years. The last 4 or 5 with more intention, and the last 12 months with, I've opened 6 new outpatient clinics in and around Chicagoland, and we'll continue to open more. We've added eating disorder as a line of service to diversify our service lines. We have programming in 4 states now to diversify funding opportunities. I kind of look at it as your retirement plan, your 401k. You don't want to be in all aggressive stock or all money market management. You want to be diversified in your portfolio, so when one is down, the others can carry the ship. And that's really the model we're taking here.
What is the biggest misconception about Rosecrance? I'm particularly interested. I mean, I think there are a lot of misconceptions as far as Medicaid
Mhm.
and the people who receive Medicaid support. People have a very narrow idea. But more broadly speaking, I'm particularly interested because your services are more hybrid, perhaps, than others in this field. Let's say you're going to a business networking function, and people are not really familiar with Rosecrance Behavioral Health. What's the question you often get or the misconception that's often expressed?
What a wonderful question. My answer would be it depends. And it depends on the region of which I'm in. I travel all over the country. I serve on national boards, and we have locations in 4 different states. In some states, in some regions, we are the safety net provider. We are the people that are helping people that are living under bridges that have schizophrenia, and, getting them into housing and medication and stability. In some regions, we serve some of the most affluent and influential people in Chicago, Illinois. And I could be at a networking event and someone says, "Oh, you only help rich people." Well, it's not true. I could be
Right.
in another community and they'll say, oh, you're the safety net provider and you only help the homeless and people on Medicaid. Both are true, but in exclusivity, neither are true. We help all people, and we do it in a way that's very respectful. You could be the person with the least amount of means, and you're going to get quality care, or you could be the most influential person in a large urban area, and you're going to get quality care. And that's just a directive from our board of directors. Everyone gets equal care, equal treat.
Yeah. Yeah. I always said, and I try not to be flippant when I say this, or when I did say this, that one of the best unintended consequences of COVID is that it had a great leveling effect. Regardless of where you are in the organization, you're all sheltering in place at home. And I think if you were a business leader, CEO, CFO, you now all of a sudden have a lot more visibility into what people are really grappling with and have been grappling with. And I think I don't have the numbers at my fingertips. I'm sure there have been studies about those effects where people in senior positions who might have had some academic, intellectual understanding, but not a real deep, visceral understanding. So I'm thinking COVID in that way had a good net positive outcome.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all naked underneath our clothes. And I was fortunate, I didn't think so at the time. I was fortunate to be born into extremely humble financial situation and raised by an incredible woman who taught me values and morals, but did so alone with no support and did so on an extremely modest income. And so I was one of them. I was the Medicaid person. I was the kid without resources. It is leveling for me because now today, when I sit in these black tie events with the title of CEO, I don't forget where I came from. And I don't forget what my mission is. My wife and I were in the Twin Cities for work. We have a strategic partner in Minneapolis, and we stayed at a kind of a, I don't know how you say it, no name or lower end hotel where there were people that had been displaced, people from Somalia that had been displaced, their apartment building caught on fire. And so they're living in this extended stay. And my wife and I were commenting on that. And someone said, why would the CEO of this big company stay there? It was inexpensive, first of all,
Right.
and had free breakfast. And she and I were engaged in this conversation of look, you strip it all away, the language difference, the clothes, the bank account, we're all naked underneath. We're all the same. And all of us are just steps away from a catastrophe that could humble us in a way. I had a mentor who used to say it's a very quick trip from the penthouse to the outhouse. And I am grateful that God has given me that perspective in working with people. That's why Rosecrance fits so well with my personal mission. And I would echo that that's the culture of our organization. We're here to serve all people. We serve the influential and affluential people very, very well. They get quality care from Rosecrance. We serve those without economic resources very, very well, and they get quality care. And that's a level of humility that I love about this organization.
You mentioned the word culture. I think a lot of companies struggle with culture, and oftentimes it's something that right and it's aspirational, but it's not something that's necessarily lived, and is usually or often a gap between the two. I'm assuming, given what Rosecrance does, that it almost more organically the culture just emerges from what you do, as opposed to other organizations where I think it may be a little bit more of an effort to be reflective and to actually implement some of those principles.
Yeah, one of the that's why I actually did my dissertation in this, and one of the key factors for engaging employees is the ability to feel good about the organization they work for. It's easy as a nonprofit mission to have that, but other organizations can have that. They can just give back in different ways, and they can volunteer for Habitat for Humanity or Make a Wish, or as a group, to give a sense of pride that your company is giving back to the community. The highest rate of turnover is in behavioral health, in all of healthcare. And it is extremely difficult work. The pay is not great at any level. The hours are long. And when you're delivering care, people aren't always expressing their gratitude. It's after their lives have improved, they express the gratitude. And you hear some stories that are very, very difficult. And so across the board, our field is the highest rate of turnover. At Rosecrance, we're fortunate that we have one of the better rates of retention in the organizations, comparative organizations, and we enjoy a very high level of employee satisfaction.
Why is that?
Well, in part because of our mission, in part because in addition to aspirational growth, that we want to be the absolute best employer, we also make a lot of effort. Small things. This year we beat our budget. Because our employee base is so stable, and that is our asset, is our employees, we're able to generate a surplus, and we exceeded our surplus, budget surplus. We gave the remaining balance back to our employees. 1,400 employees, and I think everybody got $300 or $350. Not a life-changing amount, but a really important gesture to say, this was your money, you earned it, we did what we want, now we're giving it back to you. And I think across all of our leadership, that's the mentality, that our asset is our employee base. They are the ones saving the people's lives, and we need to invest in them. We pay well. We make sure that in every region we're above the 50th percentile. So you're not going to leave for money. If you're going to leave, it's going to be because of culture, and we're going to do our damnedest to make certain that you feel supported. Are we where I want to be? Absolutely not. I don't think we'll ever be where I feel comfortable with our employee base. I don't think we could ever give back enough to our employees based on the life-saving work that they're providing. But we sure as heck try.
By the way, $300 just about everything in life is compared to what? And the young man was asked about his wife. His response was compared to what? Compared to, when you talk about $300, it's a hell of a lot better, I think, than an attaboy or a plaque.
Right.
But having said that, we use the word pivot. So I just want to pivot to a couple of business related questions.
Mhm.
And I don't usually get to ask these questions. So I'm glad to have you to answer them or address them. As a not-for-profit in the behavioral health space, how is the increased presence of private equity affecting you and your strategic plan?
Greatly. It's greatly impacting Rosecrance. We're a big company. We're just under 200 million in revenue, and for a company our size, that's substantial. We're not the largest, we're not the smallest. It's a good spot. It does put us in sights of some of the publicly traded, very large organizations in regards to competition. And the equity-backed organizations, some appear to have unlimited resources when it comes to business development, branding, advertising, communications, where we have a pretty modest budget by comparison. I want people to understand that Rosecrance is an organization that you're going to come to based on ethics and quality care, and you're going to have the best chance of outcome. And so my mission in advertising is saying, come let us fulfill our mission and help you. There is a lot of deals being made in behavioral health. After COVID, substance use acquisition skyrocketed. Now that has diminished some, but mental health, deals, roll-ups, all the talk right now, and it's an extremely active role in the equity world. I'm offered money constantly from equity providers. We do not take equity. Any growth we have, we run it out of our own operations, which puts me at a disadvantage then to try to keep up with some of the rapid growth that we see. I'm going to try not to preach here. There's an organization, the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers, NATAP, and it's a quality organization that practices ethics before personalities, and I think they're a beacon in and it's nonprofits, but it's mostly for profits and many equity backed. I think they're a beacon of light in this field that can become very dark. And there are some recent articles about the bastardizing of our field, and it's creating distrust, and it's adding to the stigma problem you and I were speaking of earlier. There are many equity-backed organizations that I would send a loved one to. And there are many for-profit, tax-structured organizations I would send a loved one to. And there are some nonprofits that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Those that are putting profit over patient are dismantling a reputation in this field and adding to distrust. Those who are contemplating how the patient can profit first are building up the organization. And we're in wild times right now where there is such, I hate to go back to the word bastardization, I'm sure it's a better word, but it's the digression. It's this dismantling of this field that I care so deeply about, this life-saving field. And you read articles in very well credible periodicals that talk about, these organizations that are just putting profit over patient. And it's ruining it for everybody. And it's ruining good, important healthcare for people who need it because they don't want to get roped into some kind of insurance scheme. So it's impacting our business because the competition is much higher, particularly for the commercial insurance market. It's impacting us because there's just some dirty pool out there that I will not allow our company to engage in. People are stealing people's names. If you're getting on the website for Rosecrance, make sure it's rosecrance.org because people pirate our name. They buy plane tickets and ship you to someplace in Southern California, charging your insurance company out-of-network benefits at outstanding, outrageous rates. It has become a passion of mine. And whatever last 10 years of work, this is where all of my focus is going to be, is to try to write the episode. So when you put greed in front of anything, it's bad. When you put greed in front of human lives that are vulnerable and perhaps one of the lowest moments of their life, it is atrocious.
But you wouldn't necessarily shut the door if an organization that checked a number of boxes came to you to explore the possibility of a merger or acquisition.
We are very aggressive in merger and acquisitions. So we just blended in an organization called North Central Behavioral Health within the last year. We also purchased an eating disorder program called Ascend Consulting. I've got a checklist. The first and foremost is this congruent with our mission? Is this going to help us advance our mission? Second, is there going to be cultural interlacing? Third, I want to know who your leadership is, and I want to know what drives their engine within there. So, yeah, we have acquired for-profit organizations, which in a nonprofit becomes a disregarded tax entity. We have partnered with and acquired non-for-profits over the time. That's accounted for a lot of our growth. If someone was equity owned, I don't think not because of the fund. I think because of the funding, the legality of it, it would become a much more complicated business venture in that regard. But I'm not anti-equity. I'm anti-profit over patient. That's what I'm against.
Okay, yeah, I probably conflated equity and mergers, acquisitions in my question, which is something of a rhetorical question. I've done work for a number of organizations, some of whom are very, very well known and have been very successful at doing acquisitions.
Mhm.
And they have a particular methodology. You say you have a check list, and they all have to check all of those boxes. How does one course correct if 6 months, a year in? I mean, I don't know if you've been in that position, but have you? And what do you generally do? We don't get particular, but to course correct when some of your notions, you thought that everything was in place, the culture was in place, the leadership was in place. How do you course correct?
I think to be fair, in any relationship, people put on their best face. Definitely with my wife, I worked hard for her to see the good side, and over the years, she's seen some of the other sides, and you adapt along the way. And yeah, so we've had failed acquisitions. We've had times where we just couldn't get the synergy that we had hoped for and had to kind of punt and reproduce what that looks like. We're committed. Once we enter a community, we're not going to abandon that community. The ones that we have had that are most successful are the ones in which there's a reason why we wanted to partner with someone in the first place. And so we want to celebrate those reasons. And we want to accentuate the beauty and the goodness of the organizations we're partnering with that we had interest in. And we're learning constantly. There are things that Rosecrance, even as the acquirer, realize that's a better way of doing business. And so we acquire there, which I think those that have been acquired appreciate that, appreciate that they're bringing something to the partnership, even though they may not be the largest shareholder in the organization. So most times we adapt and we adjust and we're very intentional. I'm not a CEO who wants to rush and ram this forward and make you us. I think there's a great opportunity and value in taking this slow and learning. We're not going anywhere. We've been here 110 years. We've got time for the long road.
I want to end on a upbeat note. This conversation was in the main upbeat, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the things you're most proud of during your 30 plus year tenure at Rosecrance?
I unabashedly am most proud of our team members. And I'm proud. I've met a board member who said, you don't seem like a CEO. And I said, what does CEO seem like? They said, you just seem so earthy, because I am in love with our team members. I am in love with our clients and how brave they are, and so inspired by these groups of individuals. And so that is without a doubt the thing I'm most proud of. I think Rosecrance is a nice blend of heart and business. We understand this is a business, and we have a sophisticated business model and people that are much more intelligent than I am in helping us run this organization. But we're always leading with our heart and our mission. We have over 100 board members, and a lot of people choke on that. A lot of CEOs choke
Sure.
over 100 board members, because we feel it's important to have representation in all of our communities. And so, we don't own this. This is a nonprofit, and we want our community members to influence how we do business. And how we do business in Northwest Indiana is different than, or Iowa is different than Champaign, Illinois. They're different regions, different companies, and I'm proud of those board members. I'm proud that we are never on the tip of the sword when it comes to groundbreaking treatment. We're on the front side, but not the tip. We want to make sure that we're not experimenting. We want to make sure that we have rigor and science and evidence behind our delivery of care. And we partner with, major universities across the Midwest to be certain that what we're providing is good care. And I'm proud of that as well. I just, at the end of the day, all of us get job offers, and I've had many job offers, more money, more prestige, more. Man, when you work for a good company and you love what you do and you love the people you do it with and you believe in the mission, my next step, God willing, is retirement. And I will count myself one of the most lucky humans in the world to have had this experience at Rosecrance.
Can't improve on that, David. I'm going to give you the last words. Really do appreciate this conversation. I've been looking forward to it since we first spoke a couple weeks back. Thanks so much for the time. Really do appreciate it. Today I spoke with David Gomel, CEO of Rosecrance Behavioral Health, a nonprofit comprehensive behavioral health organization. This is Charles Epstein for the Catalyst Podcast. Thanks for listening.